Well, violent protests in Kenosha, Wisconsin this week after a police-involved shooting. And there were calls during this time for the Democrat governor, Tony Evers, to deploy more than 1,500 National Guard members to restore order to a city under siege. My first guest says government at all levels have a moral obligation to do just that. Here's my conversation with former Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker. Governor Walker, your state has been sort of focal point this week in the news, other than the Republican National Convention, in part because of what's going on in Kenosha. Riots, severe violence. If you were still governor of Wisconsin, what would you be doing differently than what's happening there now?
Well, first off, thanks everybody for all the prayers there. In terms of your question, I don't have to just think about it. I just go back, as you know, having been a governor, to what I did a few years ago when we had the start of something like this in Milwaukee, an officer-related shooting, actually in this case between an African-American officer and an African-American individual. And it started to brew just like what we saw starting to happen the other day in Kenosha. I reached out to the mayor, I reached out to the sheriff. The mayor amazingly didn't want help from the state. The sheriff did. And so we sent massive numbers of state troopers in to help the sheriff at the park. We actually sent a full detail of the National Guard to a transit center a few blocks away from the park. And most importantly, you'll appreciate this, we worked with the local clergy who, to their credit, came out on the streets and helped diffuse the situation. And we avoided the kind of mass chaos and destruction that we saw in Kenosha, sadly, over the last few days.
Why hasn't the mayor and other officials, including the governor, been more on top of this? What's the rationale of sort of standing back and letting these mobs burn a city down?
Well, this really is a leadership fail, and that's what's so tragic. I love Kenosha. I love this state. I love America. I don't want to see it anywhere in this country for that matter. And sadly, in fact, yesterday, I've been saying this for days. I've been saying it. I've been shut down on CNN and MSNBC and others saying this, but I blame the governor and the Democrat nominee for president in part, not because obviously they're not initiating this, but for their failure to speak out about it. And I'm not alone. Yesterday, the Kenosha News, which is the local newspaper, a newspaper I might add, endorsed my opponent originally when I first ran, and traditionally have endorsed a lot of Democrats. They came out and lambasted the governor, saying that his comments on Sunday helped fuel the flames of the riots even before they started. When you look at what he said, immediately rushing to judgment, there's a whole independent investigation process here. So I learned a long time ago, again, you know this as a former governor, you cannot rush to judgment in situations like this. You saw Joe Biden saying in his statement very similarly saying that this was an excessive use of force and that the police need to be held accountable. Nothing about easing the tensions.
You referenced the interview with Anderson Cooper on CNN. I happened to catch a little of that online, and I was surprised at just how combative that he seemed to be toward you. I remember Anderson Cooper when he was an actual journalist, and now he seems to be an advocate. And it was an attack. I was somewhat stunned. You've been through this stuff before, but do you see a different level of people in the media than we've ever dealt with before?
The interview you're talking about, I think the part where he got the most worked up is where I talked about how on a prior night, one of the CNN reporters was out on the streets of Kenosha. Yeah. There's a fire burning over his shoulder. And
absolutely.
He said, it's the caption says, "Fiery but mostly peaceful protest." And I said, are you kidding me? I mean, my goodness, how can you say that? There were, hundreds and hundreds of people out there burning flags, trying to tear down gates, taking away not just buildings. Remember, these are people's livelihoods, the automobile business, the restaurants, the other places that are boarded up, in many cases burned down. These are things people work their entire life for, and insurance is not going to bring that back.
Give me an assessment, as objective as one can. Contrast what we saw last week with the Democrats, this week with the Republicans, ending with the president's rather significant speech at the South Lawn of the White House.
Well, I thought the assessment we've seen in the last day or so was pretty good. A week ago with the DNC convention, we had some friends over outside safely last week, and a number of my wife's friends in particular, again, aren't very political, but they said, the DNC didn't just seem like they were down on Trump. They seemed like they were down on America. In contrast, I thought from the first day on, from hearing from Herschel Walker and Nikki Haley, and my goodness, Tim Scott was remarkable. I mean, just remarkable. What a great personal story. But we saw real people, not just politicians, real people telling their stories about their love for America, the freedom and opportunity that's here. Are we a perfect nation? No. We've never been, but we've been striding towards that more perfect vision that God gave our earliest founders the inspiration for, and that's the kind of America I want to live in. Not one that stays the same but keeps moving forward. We saw that repeatedly. We saw it from Mike Pence's speech. We saw it from the president last night. I was, even as a Republican, I got to tell you, I was shocked how well the convention went off and how live speakers versus a bunch of canned videos really made a difference, I think, connecting with the American people.
Well, I'm grateful for your being here, but promise me you're going to come back, bring your wife, and let's talk balanced budget amendment next time.